In today's episode number 2 of You Don't Know Yourself Shiza About Trucking, we're following up on episode number 1, where we highlighted 2 ladies that made a decision about coming into the trucking business, and we were taking a look at the decision to say who made the best decision. Now, of course, some different things are in play. We talked about those different things, and I asked you for your commentary on what your thoughts were on the decision. And you came back and you laid it out and told me what you thought. So I want to share some of your thoughts, and then I want to give you my perspective, my opinion on the decision that was made by these 2 truck drivers, right? So here is one comment that was made by Mohammed. He says that both made a very good decision, right? He said that it's completely based on the situation to choose the right decision. My heartfelt wishes and success in their life. Cool. Thank you, Mohammed, for your comment. Daniel says, for me, I look at debt as slavery. I don't have a mortgage, a car note, or a truck payment. I can say F the world because I owe nobody nothing. That's a very good place to be in. So thank you so much for that comment. And someone says, Benjamin says, she bought a $175K truck with $4K down and has $100 or $1,400 payment. Come on, dude. This is ridiculous. This is how you teach real things? All right. So I'll stop there. So what you see is that there are some people that think that both decisions were good decisions. And they're basically saying it just depends on what was going on at that time. It depends on their situation, right? And I get that. I understand what it is that you're saying. But how I see it is some decisions are good decisions and some decisions are bad decisions, right? Especially when we look at how those decisions affect your life. In this situation, the lady that bought the $175,000 truck, things started out well. She said that she was making $20,000 in profit a month. But then she declined all the way to $3,000 a month. And then she couldn't pay for the truck. So she lost a $4,000 payment that she put down, and she had to pay a $7,000 fee for returning the truck. And this is a good place to segue into the comment that Benjamin made, questioning whether or not the lady paid $175,000 for the truck and was able to get a $1,400 payment on a $4,000 down payment, right? I think it's certainly possible that she was able to get that loan. I think this lends to the thinking that you know what it is that you know. And sometimes we think that what we know is all there is to know. So you have a certain thinking about loans and trucks. Maybe you think that you can't get that type of payment on that type of loan, make that type of down payment, right? Well, when she purchased this truck, it was probably late 2020, early 2021, right? And the credit conditions that we were under then as compared to now are 2 different conditions. That time it was easy credit, easy money. And you also have to understand that some banks extend loans longer than others. For example, Woodside Credit Union will allow for you to finance a luxury car at 144 months. You can't get that same loan at Bank of America or USAA or Wells Fargo. So what you know is what you know, but it's not all there is to know. Now let's break down the 2 decisions, and I'll give you my opinion on who I think made the best decision and why. I think that the best decision was made by the person that decided to work with the company. I think that 9 times out of 10, if a person, owner, operator, is financing a truck, they're making a bad decision. 9 times out of 10. And when we look at the failure rate of businesses and then we look at why they're failing, usually something tied to the financial piece of the game, it gives credence to the opinion that most people should not start an owner-operator trucking business if you have to get financing for the truck, especially in the tune of almost $200,000. People usually have a plan as long as they're making money, right? In this situation, this lady had a plan. She was doing really well as long as she was making $20,000 in profit a month. But when her profit decreased to $3,000 a month, she lost her truck. Because we have a plan for when we're doing well, but we don't have a plan when we're not making money. And if you don't have a plan when you're not making money, then you're not being realistic as far as business is concerned. You see, business will have its ups and downs. You don't just make $20,000 every month because you did that once or twice. You don't say, oh, okay, I'm just going to keep making that, because we understand that will be hills and valleys. That's how it works. But when we don't plan for the bad part, when we don't plan for not making money and have contingencies in place when that happens, then we're setting ourselves up for failure. And so many people underestimate the power of debt and how much power debt has over your business. It's already a hard hill to climb when you don't have debt, when you're just basically run a debt-free business. But when you add debt on top of that, it makes it that much harder to own and operate a business, because debt is the killer. Debt is what kills your profit. And I know many of you would say that leveraging debt is a good thing. And I would agree with you that leveraging debt is a good thing for those that know how to leverage debt, for those that have experience in leveraging debt, for those that can make more money than they're actually having to pay back. And I know it sounds good, it briefs well, and people say that they can do that, but most people cannot leverage debt. Most people can't even manage their credit cards and pay credit cards on time without getting in over their heads. So when we start looking at business debt should be something you look at very carefully before accepting or taking on that debt. And do your best to save as much money as you can before you look to go in debt. Because when you're spending your own money, contrary to what people say, you know, this idea that you shouldn't use your own money, when we're talking about a business, that's what you use until you get to the point where you can use someone else's money. If that's what you decide to do, if you at some point say, I'm going to use debt and I'm going to leverage debt, it's after you have learned the business. It's after you have made money. And now you can see opportunities where you can say, I'm going to go and borrow X amount of dollars for this particular project. And then, because you have experience, you can make money on the money and not squander the money, right? But in most cases, most times when people leverage debt or call themselves leveraging debt, beginners trying to do that, it turns out to be a disaster, right? So we have this idea in our minds that when we get a loan, we've actually accomplished something. And really, you haven't accomplished anything except you went out and got some money that you have to pay back at an interest rate. And depending on your credit, depending on what type of bank you got the loan from, will depend on how much interest you're paying. And in the current environment that we're in, you're paying exponentially higher in interest than you were 1 or 2 years ago, right? So you have to really consider all of everything involved with debt before you go out and take $175,000 or $200,000 loan. We have to really look at that type of loan and say, man, is this in my best interest? And what happens if I'm not making money? You have to look at that possibility as a business owner. That's what I wanted to share with you today. I certainly hope this information has been helpful. If you want to learn more about the freight brokerage business, I'll leave a free link in the description. It's my 5-video series. It gives you the opportunity to come into the office with me via video, and you can kind of check out a scenario in where I'm talking to shippers, talking to carriers. That way you can get a really good idea of how the business works before you come into it.